Hello. Yes, I had a hair in my, it was like stuck in my eyelashes and it was like tickling my inner corner. So I had to get it. Hello. Thank you. Hello, hello. I hope that these next chapters aren't as stressful as what I read yesterday was, because that was a lot. It was a lot to digest. And the funny thing is that it's like it's only gonna get worse. And I know that, and I like kind of understand that, but like at the same time I'm not ready for all that. Anyway. Okay. We're reading through 41 today, and I fucking forgot my tabs again. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, because y'all are starting to get me excited. Okay, chapter 38. The meeting with Rolf, once the harbor was again safe, was quick, frank. And Aylin knew if she didn't get the hell out of this city for an hour or two, she might very well explode again. Every key has a lock, Deanna had said, a little reminder of Brandon's order, using her voice, and had called her that title that struck some chord of horror and understanding in her, so deep she was still working out what it meant. The queen who was promised. Aylin stormed onto a spit of beach on the far side of the island, having run here, needing to get her blood roaring, needing it to silence the thoughts in her head. Behind her, Rowan's steps were quiet as death. Only the two of them had been in that meeting with Rolf. Bloodied, soaked, the pirate lord had met them in the main room of his inn, and fuck the name of it now, a permanent reminder of the ship she'd wrecked. He demanded, what the hell happened? And she had been so tired, so pissed off and full of disgust and despair that it had been nearly impossible to muster the swagger. When you're blessed by Mala, you find that sometimes your control can slip. Slip? I don't know what you fools were talking about down there, but from where I was standing, it looked like you lost your goddamn mind and were about to fire on my town. Rowan, leaning against the edge of a nearby table, explained. Magic is a living thing. When you are that deep in it, remembering yourself, your purpose, is an effort. That my queen did so before it was too late is a feat in itself. Rolf wasn't impressed. It looks to me like you were a little girl playing with power too big for you to handle, and only your prince jumping in your path made you decide not to slaughter my innocent people. Aylin closed her eyes for a heartbeat, the image of Rowan leaping in front of that fist of moonfire flashing before her. When she opened her eyes, she let the crackling assuredness fade into something frozen and hard. It looks to me, she said, like the pirate lord of Skulls Bay and long-lost Mycenaean heir has just allied with a young queen so powerful she can decimate cities if she wishes. It looks to me like you have made yourself untouchable with my alliance, and any fool who seeks to harm you, usurp you, will have me to contend with. So I suggest you salvage what you can of your precious ship, mourn the dozen men I take full responsibility for losing, and whose families I will compensate accordingly, and shut your running mouth. She turned toward the door, exhaustion and rage nipping at her bones. Rolf said to her back, Do you want to know what the cost of this map was? She halted, Rowan glancing between them, face unreadable. She smirked over her shoulder. Your soul? Rolf let out a hoarse laugh. Yes, in a way. When I was 16, I was barely more than a slave on one of these festering ships, my Mycenaean heritage just a one-way ticket to a beating. He laid a tattooed hand on the thresher's lettering. Every coin I earned came back here, to my mother and sister, and one day the ship I was on got caught in a storm. The captain was a haughty bastard, refused to find safe harbor, and the ship was destroyed. Most of the crew drowned. I drifted for a day, washed up on an island at the edge of the archipelago, and awoke to find a man staring down at me. I asked if I was dead, and he laughed and inquired what I wanted for myself. I was so delirious I told him I wanted to be captain. I wanted to be pirate lord of Skulls Bay and make the arrogant fools like the captain who had killed my friends bow before me. I thought I was dreaming when he explained that if he were to grant me the skills to do it, there would be a price. What I valued most in the world, he would have. I said I'd pay it, whatever it was. Aw, damn. Did he take his mom? I had no belongings, no wealth, no people anyway. A few coppers would be nothing. He smiled before he vanished into sea mist. I awoke with ink on my hands. Aelin waited. Rolf shrugged. I made it back here, finding friendly ships using the map the stranger had inked there, a gift from a god, or so I thought. But it wasn't until I saw the black sheets over my cottage's windows that I began to worry. And it wasn't until I learned that my mother and sister had used their little money to hire a skiff to go looking for me, and that the skiff had returned to harbor but they had not, that I realized the price I'd handed over. That's what the sea claimed, what he claimed, and it made me soulless enough that I loosed myself upon this city, this archipelago. Rolf's green eyes were as merciless as the sea god who had gifted and damned him. That was the price of my power. What shall yours be, Aelin Galathinius? She didn't reply to him before storming out, though Deanna's voice had echoed in her mind, the queen who was promised. Now, standing on that empty beach and monitoring the glimmering expanse of the sea, as the last of the sun vanished, Rowan was beside her. Did you willingly use the key? No hint of judgment, no condemnation? Whatever. Just curiosity and concern. Aelin rasped. No, I don't know what happened. 1 minute it was us, then she came. She rubbed at her chest, avoiding the touch of the golden chain against it. Her throat tightened as she took in that spot on his own chest, right between his pectorals, where her fist had been aimed. How could you? She breathed, a tremor running through her. How could you put yourself in front of me like that? Rowan took a step closer, but no farther. The crashing of waves and cries of gulls heading home for the night filled the space between them. If you had destroyed that city, it would have destroyed you, and any sort of hope at an alliance. Shaking began in her hands, spreading to her arms, her chest, her knees. Flame and ash curled on her tongue. If I had killed you, she hissed, but choked on the words, unable to finish the thought, the idea of it. Her throat burned, and she squeezed her eyes shut, warm flames rippling around her. I thought I'd found the bottom of my power, she admitted, magic already overflowing. So soon, too soon after she'd emptied herself. I thought what I found in Wendlin was the bottom. I had no idea it was all just an antechamber. Aelin lifted her hands, opening her eyes to find her fingers wreathed in flame. Darkness spread over the world. Through the veil of gold and blue and red she looked at her prince. She raised her burning hands helplessly between them. She stole me. She took me, and I could feel her consciousness. It was like she was a spider, waiting in a web for decades, knowing I'd one day be strong and stupid enough to use my magic and the key together. I might as well have rung the dinner bell. Her fire burned hotter, brighter, and she let it build and rise and flicker. Huh? Oh. Her fire burned hotter, brighter, and she let it build and rise and flicker. A wry, bitter smile. It seems she wants us to make finding this lock a priority, if he were given the message twice. Indeed. Isn't it enough to contend with Erwin and Maeve, to do the bidding of Brannon and Elena? Now I have to face the gods breathing down my neck about it as well. Perhaps it was a warning. Perhaps Deanna wished to show you how a not so friendly god might use you if you're not careful. She enjoyed every reading second of it. She wanted to see what my power might do, what she could do with my body, with the key. Her flames burned hotter, shredding through her clothes until they were ash, until she was naked and clothed in only her own fire. And what she called me, the queen who was promised. Promised when? To whom? To do what? I've never heard that phrase in my life, not even before Terrasen fell. We'll figure it out. And that was that. How can you be so fine with this? Embers sprayed from her like a swarm of fireflies. Rowan's mouth tightened. Trust me, Aelin. I'm anything but fine with the idea that you are fair game to those immortal bastards. I'm anything but fine with the idea that you could be taken from me like that. If I could, I would hunt Deanna down and pay her back for it. She's the goddess of the hunt. You might be at a disadvantage. Her flames eased a bit. A half smile. She's a haughty immortal. She's bound to slip up. And besides, a shrug. I have her sister on my side. He angled his head, studying her fire, her face. Perhaps that's why Mala appeared to me that morning, why she gave me her blessing. Because you're the only one arrogant and insane enough to hunt a goddess? Rowan shucked off his boots, tossing them onto the dry sand behind him. Because I'm the only one arrogant and insane enough to ask Mala, Firebringer, to let me stay with the woman I love. I had to burp, but it's gone. Her flames turned to pure gold at that word. But she said, perhaps you're just the only one arrogant and insane enough to love me. That unreadable mask cracked. This new depth to your power, Aelin, changes nothing. What Deanna did changes nothing. You're still young. Your power is still growing. And if this new well of power gives us even the slightest advantage against Erwin, then thank the Redding Darkness for it. But you and I will learn to manage your power together. You do not face this alone. You don't decide that you are unlovable because you have powers that can save and destroy. If you start to resent that power, he shook his head. I don't think we will win this war if you start down that road. Aelin strode into the lapping waves and sank to her knees in the surf, steam rising around her in great plumes. Sometimes, she admitted over the hissing water, I wish someone else could fight this war. Rowan stepped into the bubbling surf, his magic shielding against the heat of her. Ah, he said, kneeling beside her as she still gazed out over the dark sea. But who else would be able to get under Erwin's skin? Never underestimate the power of that insufferable swagger. She chuckled, starting to feel the cool kiss of the water on her naked body. As far as my memory serves, Prince, it was that insufferable swagger that won your cranky immortal heart. Rowan leaned into the thin veil of flame now melting into night's sweet air and Oh, okay. A sharp, wicked bite. There's my fire heart. Aelin let him pivot her in the surf and sand to face him fully. Let him Oh. 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 I don't know if I can read this out loud, y'all. Sorry. She felt the words dangling there, felt herself dangling there, off the edge of the cliff. She swallowed, but Rowan had caught her each time she had fallen. First, when she had plummeted into that abyss of despair and grief. Second, when that castle had shattered and she had plunged to the earth. And now this time, this third time, she was not... They haven't fucked, have they? She was not afraid. Aelin met Rowan's stare and said clearly and baldly and without a speckle of doubt, I love you. I'm in love with you, Rowan, and I have been for a while. And I know there are limits to what you can give me, and I know you might need time. His lips crushed into hers, and he said onto her mouth, dropping words more precious than rubies and emeralds and sapphires into her heart, her soul. I love you. Oh, yeah! This corny ass shit. There's no limit to what I can give to you. No time I need. Even when this world is a forgotten whisper of dust between the stars, I will love you. Wow! 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 See, I wish I had my fucking tabs! Aelin didn't know when she started crying, when her body began shaking with the force of it. She had never said such words to anyone, never let herself be that vulnerable, never felt this burning. And that's so right. Oh my God, she never got to tell Sam how she felt. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up right now, shut up right now. Never let herself be that vulnerable, never felt this burning and unending thing, so consuming she might die from the force of it. Rowan pulled back, wiping away her tears with his thumbs, one after another. He said softly, barely audible over the crashing waves around them, "Fireheart." She sniffed back tears. Don't act like those 3 words don't haunt me, Nico, because they do. I hate packing. It'll live inside my mind, and it'll haunt me for the rest of my life. She sniffed back tears, buzzard. He roared a laugh, and she let him lay her down on the sand with a gentleness near reverence. His sculpted chest heaved slightly as he ran an eye over her bare body. Oh, we're getting... Rowan's canines gleamed. Nothing is getting past that shield, and nothing is going to hurt me either. Something tight in her chest eased. Is it that different with someone like me? I don't know, Rowan admitted. Again, his eyes slid along her body as if he could see through skin to her... If he could see through skin to her burning heart beneath. I've never been with an equal. I've never allowed myself to be that unleashed. For every bit of power she threw at him, he'd throw back at her. She braced herself on her elbows, lifting her mouth to the new scar on his shoulder, the wound small and jagged, as broad as an arrowhead. She kissed it once, twice. Rowan's body was so tense above her, she thought his muscles would snap, but his hands were gentle as they drifted to her back, stroking the scars and the tattoos he'd inked over them. The waves tickled and caressed her, and he made to settle over her, but she lifted a hand to his chest, halting him dead. She smiled against his mouth. If we're equals, then I don't understand why you're still half-clothed. She didn't give him the chance to explain as oh. 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 Damn. She gonna burn him alive. Oh. that was the first time I really lost control around you, you know. I wanted to chuck you off of a cliff, yet I bit you before I knew what I was doing. I think my body knew, my magic knew, and you tasted raw and loose a jagged breath. So good. I hated you for it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Oh. Damn. Damn. Well, they finally did it. It's about fucking time. Sorry. But it's about fucking time. Damn. Okay. Okay. Chapter 39, but they're still going at it, so but at least it was less likely to start a riot. Barely, though, and it'd be obvious what they'd done on that beach the moment they stepped within scenting range of anyone with a preternatural sense of smell. He'd marked her, richer than the scent that had clung to her before. Marked her deep and true, and there was no undoing it, no washing it away. She'd claimed him, and he'd claimed her, and he knew she was well aware of what that claiming meant, just as he knew. He knew it had been a choice on her part, a final decision regarding the matter of who would be in her royal bed. He would try to live up to that honor, try to find some way to prove he deserved it, that she hadn't been wrong, that she hadn't been on the wrong horse. Somehow, he'd earn it. even with so little to offer beyond his own magic and heart. But he also knew his queen, and knew that despite the enormity of what they'd done, Aelin had also kept him on that beach to avoid the others, avoid answering their questions and demands. But he made it 1 foot inside the Ocean Rose, saw the light in Adian's room, and knew their friends would not be so easily deterred. Indeed, Aelin was scowling up at the light, though worry quickly replaced it as she remembered the shifter who had been so thoroughly unconscious. Her bare feet were silent on the stairs and hallway as she hurried for the room, not bothering to knock before flinging open the door. Rowan loosed a sharp breath, trying to draw up his magic to cool the fire stilled in his blood, to calm the instincts roaring and raging at him, not to take her, but to eliminate any other threat. A dangerous time for any Fae male when they first took a lover, worse when it meant something more. Dorian and Adian sat in the 2 armchairs before the darkened fireplace, arms crossed, and her cousin's face went pale with what might have been terror as he scented Aelin, the markings both seen and invisible on them. Lysandra sat in bed, face drawn but eyes narrowed at the queen. It was the shifter who purred. "Enjoy your ride?" Adian didn't dare move, and was giving Dorian a warning look to do the same. Rowan bit down against the rage at the sight of other males near his queen, reminding himself that they were his friends, but that primal rage stumbled as he felt Aelin shuddering relief upon finding the shifter mostly healed and lucid, but his queen only shrugged. Isn't that all these Fae males are good for?" Rowan raised his brows, chuckling as he debated reminding her how she'd... Oh. Aelin shot him a glare, daring him to say it. God damn. And despite just having her, despite the fact that he could still taste her, Rowan knew that whenever they found their bed again, she would not get the rest she wanted. Color stained Aelin's cheeks, as if she saw his plans unfold, but she lifted the amulet from around her neck, dropped it onto the low-lying table between Adian and Dorian, and said, "I learned that this was the 3rd word key when I was still in Wendelin." Silence. Then, as if she hadn't shattered any sense of safety they still possessed, Aelin withdrew the mangled eye of Elena from her pack and chucked it once in the air and jerked her chin at the king of Ardalan. "I think it's time you met your ancestor." Dorian listened to Aelin's story, about the word key she'd secretly carried, about what had happened today in the bay, about how she'd tricked Lorcan and how it would eventually lead the warrior back to them, hopefully with the other 2 keys in his hands, and if they were lucky, they would have already found this lock she had been ordered twice now to retrieve from the stone marshes, the only thing capable of binding the word keys back into the gate from which they'd been hewn and ending the threat of Erwin forever. No number of allies would make a difference if they could not stop Erwin from using those keys to unleash the Valcords from his own realm upon Aurelia. His possession of 2 keys had already led to such darkness. If he gained the 3rd, gained mastery over the word gate and could open it to any world at will, use it to summon any conquering army, they had to find that lock to nullify those keys. When the queen was done, Adian was silently fuming, Lysandra was frowning, and Aelin was now snuffing out the candles in the room with hardly a wave of her hand. 2 ancient tomes, withdrawn from Adian's crammed saddlebags, lay open on the table. He knew those books. He had no idea she'd taken them from Rifthold. The warped metal of the Eye of Elena amulet sat atop one of them, as Aelin double-checked the markings on an age-spotted page. Darkness fell as she used her own blood to etch those markings on the wooden floor. "Looks like our bill of damages in this city is going to rise," Lysandra muttered. Aelin snorted. "We'll just move the rug to cover it." She finished making a mark, a word mark, Dorian realized with a chill, and stepped back, plucking up the eye in her fist. "Now what?" Adian said. "Now we keep our mouths shut," Aelin said sweetly. The moonlight spread on the floor. Devoured by the dark lines she'd etched, Aelin drifted over to where Rowan sat on the edge of the bed, still shirtless thanks to the queen currently wearing his shirt, and took up a spot beside him, a hand on his knee. Lysandra was the first to notice. She sat up in bed, green eyes glowing with animal brightness as the moonlight on the blood marks seemed to shimmer. Aelin and Rowan jerked to their feet. Dorian just stared at the marks, at the moonlight, at the beam of it shining through the open balcony doors. As if the light itself were a doorway, the shaft of moonlight turned into a humanoid figure. It flickered, its form barely there, like a figment of a dream. The hair on Dorian's arms rose, and he had the good sense to slide out of his chair and onto a knee as he bowed his head. He was the only one who did so. The only one, he realized, who had spoken to Elena's mate, Gavin. Long ago, another lifetime ago, he tried not to consider what it meant that he now carried Gavin's sword, Damaris. Aelin had not asked for it back, did not seem inclined to do so. A muffled female voice, as if it were calling from far away, flickered in and out with the image. Too far, a light, young voice said. Aelin stepped forward and shut those ancient spellbooks before stacking them with a thump. Well, Rifthold isn't exactly available, and your tomb is trashed, so tough luck. Dorian's head lifted as he glanced between the flickering figure of moonlight and the young queen of flesh and blood. Elena's roughly formed body vanished, then reappeared, as if the wind itself disturbed her. Can't hold. Then I'll make it quick. Aelin's voice was sharp as a blade. No more games. No more half-truths. Why did Deanna arrive today? I get it. Finding the lock is important, but what is it? And tell me what she meant by calling me the queen who was promised. As if the words jolted the dead queen like lightning, his ancestor appeared, fully corporeal. Whatever. She was exquisite, her face young and grave, her hair long and silvery white, like Manon's, and her eyes, startling, dazzling blue. They now fixed on him, the pale gown she wore fluttering on a phantom breeze. Rise, young king, Aelin snorted. Can we not play the holier-than-thou ancient spirit game? But Elena's shoulders back. Oh. Anna happened to be watching at that exact moment. That she spoke to you at all is a gift. Hard, calculating. Ever the general, fixed on the dead queen now standing. Hard, calculating. Ever the general, fixed on the dead queen now standing. In hard, calculating. Ever the general, fixed on the dead queen now standing in the hard, calculating. Ever the general, fixed on the dead queen now standing in the. It is now half drowned on the plain. In a temple at its center, we laid the remnants of the lock. My father attained the lock at terrible cost. The cost of my mother's body, her mortal life. A lock for the word keys, to seal shut the gate, and bind the keys inside them forever. I did not understand what it had been intended for. My father never told me about any of it until it was too late. All I knew was that the lock was only able to be used once, its power capable of sealing anything we wished. So I stole it. I used it for myself, for my people. I've been paying for that crime since. Damn. Oh, can y'all not see me? Can y'all see me? Oh, my neck. Oh, I have a crick in my neck. Oh, there it goes. Oh, much better. Woo. What was that? I read, what if what happens in KOA sends me off the deep end? Like, okay. Y'all can see me now. Okay. I'm just not going to think about that. I'm going to get back to reading. You used it to seal Erwin in his tomb, Aelin said quietly. The pleading faded from Elena's face. My friends died in the valley of the Black Mountains that day, so I might have the chance to stop him. I heard their screaming, even in the heart of Erwin's camp. I will not apologize for trying to end the slaughter so that the survivors could have a future. So you could have a future. So you used the lock, then chucked it into a ruin? We placed it inside the holy city on the plain to be a there's that fucking word. Y'all, I struggle with this. I know, okay, commemoration, there you go, of the lives lost. But a great cataclysm rocked the land decades later, and the city sank. The marsh water flowed in, and the lock was forgotten. No one ever retrieved it. Its power had already been used. It was just a bit of metal and glass. And now it's not? If both my father and Deanna mentioned it, it must be vital in stopping Erwin. Forgive me if I Don't trust the word of a goddess who tried to use me like a puppet to blow this town into smithereens. Her methods are roundabout, but she likely meant you no harm. Bullshit. Elena flickered again. Get to the stone marshes. Find the lock. I told Brannon, and I'll tell you, we have more pressing matters at hand. My mother died to forge that lock, Elena snapped, her eyes blazing bright. She let go of her mortal body so that she could forge the lock for my father. I was the one who broke the promise for how it was to be used. Aelin blinked, and Dorian wondered if he should indeed be worried when even she was speechless, but Aelin only whispered, Who was your mother? Dorian ransacked his memory, all his history lessons on his royal house, but couldn't recall. Elena made a sound that might have been a sob, her image fading into cobwebs and moonlight. She who loved my father best, she who blessed him with such mighty gifts, and then bound herself in a mortal body and offered him the gift of her heart. Aelin's arms slackened at her sides. Aedion blurted, Shit. Elena laughed humorlessly as she said to Aelin, Why do you think you burn so brightly? It is not just Brannon's blood that is in your veins, but Mala's. Damn! What the fuck? Aelin breathed. Mala Firebringer was your mother. Elena was already gone. Damn, Aedion said. Honestly, it's a miracle you two didn't kill each other. Dorian didn't bother to correct him that it was technically impossible given that one of them was already dead. Rather, he weighed all that the queen had said and demanded. Rowan, remaining silent, seemed to be doing the same. Lysandra sniffed around the blood marks as if testing for whatever remnants of the ancient queen might be around. Aelin stared out the open balcony doors, eyes hooded and mouth a tight line. She unfurled her fist and examined the eye of Elena, still held in her palm. The clock struck 1 a.m. Slowly, Aelin turned to him. Mal's blood flows in our veins, she said hoarsely, fingers closing around the eye before she slipped it into the shirt's pocket. He blinked, realizing that it indeed did, that perhaps both of them had been so considerably gifted because of it. Dorian said to Rowan, if only because he might have heard or witnessed something in all his travels, Is it truly possible for a god to become mortal like that? Rowan, who had been watching Aelin a bit warily, twisted to him. I've never heard of such a thing, but Fae have given up their immortality to bind their lives to that of their mortal mates. Dorian had the distinct feeling Aelin was deliberately examining a spot on her shirt. It's certainly possible Mala found a way to do it. It's not just possible, Aelin murmured. She did it. That bit of power I uncovered today, that was from Mala herself. Elena might be many things, but she wasn't lying about that. Lysandra shifted back into her human form, swaying enough that she set herself down on the bed before Aedion could move to steady her. So what do we do now? She asked, her voice gravelly. Erwin's fleet squats in the Gulf of Oro. Maeve sails for Ilwi, but neither knows that she possesses the word key, or that this lock exists, and lies directly between their forces. For a heartbeat, Dorian felt like a useless fool as they all, including him, looked to Aelin. He was king of Ardalan, he reminded himself, equal to her, even if his lands and people had been stolen, his capital captured. But Aelin rubbed her eyes with her thumb and forefinger, loosing a long breath. I really, really hate that old windbag. She lifted her head, surveying them all, and said simply, We sail for the stone marshes in the morning to hunt down the lock. Rolf from the Mycenaeans? Aedion asked. He takes half his fleet to find the rest of the Mycenaeans, wherever they're hiding. Then they all sail north to Terrasen. Rifthold lies between here and there, with wyverns patrolling it, Aedion countered. And this plan depends on if we can trust Rolf to actually follow through on his promise. Rolf knows how to stay out of range, Rowan said. We have little choice but to trust him, and he honored the promise he made to Aelin regarding the slaves 2.5 years ago. No doubt why Aelin had made him confirm it so thoroughly. And the other half of Rolf's fleet? Aedion pushed. Some remain to hold the archipelago, Aelin said, and some come with us to Ilwi. You can't fight Maeve's armada with a fraction of Rolf's fleet, Aedion said, crossing his arms. Dorian bit back his own agreement, leaving the general to it. let alone Morath's forces. I'm not going there to pick a fight, was all Aelin said. And that was that. They dispersed then, Aelin and Rowan slipping off to their own room. Dorian lay awake. Even when his companion's breathing became deep and slow, he mulled over each word Elena had uttered, mulled over that long-ago appearance of Gavin, who had awoken him to stop Aelin from opening that portal. Perhaps Gavin had done it not to spare Aelin from damnation, but to keep those waiting, cold-eyed gods from seizing her, as Deanna had today. He tucked the speculation away to consider when he was less prone to leaping to conclusions. But the threads lay in a lattice across his mind, in hues of red and green and gold and blue, glimmering and thrumming, whispering their secrets in languages not spoken in this world. Bro. What the fuck is going on? Damn, we're almost to part 2. I need to stop looking ahead. An hour passed on. They departed Skull's Bay on the swiftest ship Rolf could spare. Rolf didn't bother to say goodbye, already preoccupied with readying his fleet. Before they sailed out of the sparkling harbor and into the lush archipelago beyond, he did grant Aelin one parting gift, vague coordinates for the lock. His map had found it, or rather, the general location. Some sort of wards must be placed around it, the captain warned them, if his tattoo could not pinpoint its resting place. But it was better than nothing, Dorian supposed. Aelin had grumbled as much. Rowan circled high above in hawk form, scouting behind and ahead. Fenris and Gavriel were at the oars, helping row them out of the harbor, Aedion doing so as well, at a comfortable distance from his father. Dorian himself stood at the wheel beside the surly, short captain, an older woman who had no interest in speaking to him, king or not. Lysandra swam in the surf below in some form or another, guarding them from any threats beneath the surface. But Aelin stood alone on the prow, her golden hair unbound and flowing behind her, so still that she might have been the twin to the figurehead mere feet beneath. The rising sun cast her in shimmering gold, no hint of the moonfire that had threatened to destroy them all. But even as the queen stood, undimming before the shadows of the world, a lick of cold traced the contours of Dorian's heart, and he wondered if Aelin was somehow watching the archipelago, and the seas, and the skies, as if she might never see them again. What do y'all mean, here we go? What do y'all mean, here we go? I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here. What do you mean? What do you mean? 3 days later, they were nearly out of the archipelago's strangling grasp. Dorian was again at the helm, Aelin at the prow. The others scattered on various rounds of scouting and resting. His magic felt it before he did, a sense of awareness, of warning and awakening. He scanned the horizon. The Fey warriors fell silent before the others. It looked like a cloud at first, a wind-tossed little cloud on the horizon. Then a large bird! Oh my God! No. Wait. No. Wait. A large bird? Oh my God. When the sailors began rushing for their weapons, Dorian's mind at last spat out a name for the beast that swept toward them on shimmering wide wings. Wyvern. Huh? Oh! Oh! Not a bird! Oh! It's Manon! No! It's Manon? Oh my God. There was only one. One? There's supposed to be 12 others. There's supposed to be 12 others. And only one rider atop it. A rider who did not move, whose white hair was unbound, listing toward the side, as the rider now was. The wyvern dropped lower, skimming over the water. Lysandra was instantly ready, waiting for the queen's order to shift into whatever form would fight it. No. The word ripped from Dorian's lips before he could think, but then it came out, over and over, as the wyvern and rider sailed closer to the ship. The witch was unconscious, her body leaning to the side because she was not awake, because that was blue blood all over her. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. Dorian was roaring the order as he hurtled for where Fenris had drawn his longbow, a black-tipped arrow aimed at the witch's exposed neck. His words were swallowed by the shouting of the sailors and their captain. Dorian's magic swelled as he unsheathed Damaris. But then Aylin's voice cut over the fray. Hold your fire. All of them halted. The wyvern sailed close, then banked, circling the boat. Blue blood crusted the beast's scarred sides. So much blood. The witch was barely in the saddle. Her tan face was leached of color, her lips paler than whalebone. The wyvern completed its circle, sweeping lower this time, readying to land as near to the boat as possible. Not to attack, but for help. One moment the wyvern was soaring smoothly over the cobalt waves. Then the witch listed so far that her body seemed to go boneless. As if in that heartbeat, when help was mere feet away, whatever luck had kept her astride at last abandoned her. Silence fell on the ship as Man in Blackbeak tumbled from her saddle, falling through wind and spindrift, and hit the water. Oh my god. Oh. Abraxas! I'm about to cry. If anything happens to him, I'm gonna be so upset. I'm gonna be so upset. Chapter 40. The smoke had been stinging Elite. Oh! 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 We're back! We're back with Lorcan! Oh my god. Oh my god. Ah! Oh my god! The smoke had been stinging Elid's eyes for the better part of the gray, muggy morning. Just farmers, burning fields left to whatever Molly had claimed, so the ashes might fertilize the earth for next year's harvest. They had to be miles away, but the smoke and ash would travel far on the brisk northward wind, the wind that led home to Terrason. But they weren't headed to Terrason. They were headed due east, straight toward the coast. Soon she'd have to cut northward. They had passed through one town, only one, and its denizens had already been fatigued of roving carnivals and performers. Even with the night barely underway, Elide already knew they would likely only make enough money to cover their expenses for staying. She had attracted a grand total of 4 customers to her little tent, so far. Mostly young men looking to know which of the village girls fancied them, barely noticing that Elide, beneath the makeup pasted thick as cream on her face, was no older than they were. They scampered off when their friends had rushed by, whispering through the star-painted flaps that a swordsman was putting on the show of a lifetime, and his arms were nearly the size of tree trunks. Elide had glowered, both at the at the feckless young men who vanished, one without paying, and at Lorcan for stealing the show. She waited all of 2 minutes before shoving out of the tent, the enormous, ridiculous headdress Molly had plucked on her hair, snagging on the flaps. Bits of dangling beads and charms hung from the arching crest, and Elide batted them out of her eyes, nearly tripping over her matching blood-red robes as she went to see what all the fuss was about. If the young men of the town had been impressed by Lorcan's muscles, it was nothing on what those muscles were doing to the young women. And older women, Elide realized, not bothering to squeeze through the tiny packed crowd before the makeshift stage on which Lorcan stood, juggling and throwing swords and knives. Lorcan was not a natural performer. No, he had the gall to actually look bored up there, bordering on outright sullen. But what he lacked in charm, he made up for with his shirtless, oiled body. And, holy gods, Lorcan made the young men who had visited her tent look like children. Hell yeah he does. Hell yeah he does. Oh my. I would have, y'all, I definitely would have been one of the girls in that crowd, fawning over him. He balanced and hurled his weapons as if they were nothing, and she had the feeling the warrior was merely going through one of his daily exercise routines. But the crowd still oohed and awed at every twist and toss and catch, and coins still trickled into the pan at the edge of the stage. With the torches around him, Lorcan's dark hair seemed to swallow the light, his onyx eyes flat and dull. Elide wondered if he was contemplating the murder of everyone drooling over him like dogs around a bone. She couldn't blame him. A trickle of sweat slid through the crisp spattering of dark hair on his sculpted chest. Elide watched, a bit transfixed, as that bead of sweat wended down the muscled grooves of his stomach, lower. No better than those ogling women, she said to herself, about to head back to her tent when Molly observed from beside her. Your husband could just be sitting up there, fixing your stockings, and women would empty their pockets for the chance to stare at him. He had that effect whenever we went with our formal carnival, Elide lied. Molly clicked her tongue. You're lucky, she murmured, as Lorcan hurled his sword high in the air and people gasped, that he still looks at you the way he does. Oh my god. Wait, what? What did he do? Who? I'm the type of girl to make you forget that you got type. Elide wondered if Lorcan would look at her at all if she told him what her name was, who she was, what she carried. He'd slept on the floor of the tent each night. Not that she'd ever once bothered to offer him the role. He usually came in after she'd fallen asleep and left before she awoke. To do what, she had no idea. Perhaps exercise, since his body was like that. Lorcan chucked 3 knives in the air, bowing without one bit of humility or amusement to the crowd. They gasped again as the blades aimed for his exposed spine. But in an easy, beautiful maneuver, Lorcan rolled, catching each blade, one after another. The crowd cheered, and Lorcan coolly looked at his pan of coins. More copper and some silver flowed like the patter of rain. Molly let out a low laugh. Desire and fear can loosen any purse strings. A sharp glance. Shouldn't you be in your tent? Elide didn't bother responding as she left, and could have sworn she felt Lorcan's gaze narrow on her, on the headdress and swaying beads, on the long, voluminous robes. She kept going, and endured a few more young men, and some young women, asking about their love lives before she found herself again alone in that silly tent. The dark only illuminated by dangling crystal orbs with tiny candles inside. She was waiting for Molly to finally shout the carnival was over when Lorcan shouldered through the flaps, wiping his face with a scrap of fabric that was most definitely not his shirt. Elide said, Molly will be begging you to stay, you realize. He slid into the folding chair before her round table. Is that your professional prediction? She swatted at a strand of beads that swayed into her eyes. Did you sell your shirt, too? Lorcan gave a feral grin. Got 10 coppers from a farmer's wife for it. Elide scowled. That's disgusting. Money is money. I suppose you don't need to worry about it with all the gold you've got stashed. Elide held his stare, not bothering to look pleasant. You're in a rare good mood. Having 2 women and 1 man offer a spot in their beds tonight will do that to a person. Then why are you here? It came out sharper than she intended. He surveyed the hanging orbs, the woven carpet, the black tablecloth, and then her hands, scarred and calloused and small, gripping the edge of the table. Wouldn't it ruin your ruse if I slipped off into the night with someone else? You'd be expected to throw me out on my ass, to be heartbroken and raging for the rest of your time here. You might as well enjoy yourself, she said. You're going to leave soon anyway. So are you, he reminded her. Elide tapped a finger on the tablecloth, the rough fabric scratching against her skin. What is it? He demanded, as if it were an inconvenience to be polite. Nothing. It wasn't nothing, though. She knew why she'd been delaying that turn northward, the inevitable departure from this group and final trek of her own. On her own, she could barely make an impact at a backwater carnival. What the hell would she do in a court of such powerful people, especially without being able to read? While Aelin could destroy kings and save cities, what the hell would she do to prove her worth? Wash their clothes? Clean their dishes? Marion, he said roughly. She looked up, surprised to find him still there. Lorcan's dark eyes were unreadable in the dimness. You had plenty of young men unable to stop staring at you tonight. Why not have some fun with them? Why? She snapped. The thought of a stranger touching her, of some faceless, nameless man pawing at her in the dark. Lorcan stilled. He said too calmly, When you were in Morath, did someone... No. She knew what he meant. No, I didn't get that far. but the memory of those men touching her, laughing at her nakedness, she shoved it away. I've never been with a man, never had the chance or the interest. He cocked his head, his dark, silken hair sliding over his face. Do you prefer women? Oh, not my man out here being an ally. Hold on. Okay. Elite needs some reading with Rhysand. Stop. She blinked at him. No, I don't think so. I don't know what I prefer. Again, I've never had the opportunity to feel that desire, lust. She didn't know, and she didn't know how or why they'd wound up talking about this. Why? With all of Lorcan's considerable focus honed in on her, with the way he'd glanced at her red-painted mouth, Alid wanted to tell him about the tower and Vernon and her parents, about why, if she were ever to feel desire, it'd be a result of trusting someone so much that those horrors faded away, a result of knowing they would fight tooth and claw to keep her free and never lock her up or hurt her or leave her. Alid opened her mouth. Then the screaming started. Oh, the fuck? A light in the flame? What the fuck is that? A light in the flame? Oh! Not me completely forgetting about that. Yeah, yeah, no, I remembered. Yes, I'm absolutely reading Nyktos' book. No one is ever safe in this book? What are you talking about? Is someone about to die? Oh, I still have that crick in my neck. Oh my god. It hurts. It hurts. It feels like whiplash. Ow. Ugh. Lorcan didn't know why the hell he was in Marion's ridiculous little oracle's tent. He needed to wash, needed to clean away the sweat and oil and feel of all those ogling eyes on him. But he'd spotted Marion in the crowd while he'd finished up his piss-poor performance. He hadn't seen her earlier in the evening before she'd put on that headdress and those robes, but maybe it was the cosmetics, the heavy kohl around her eyes, the way the red-painted lips made her mouth look like a fresh piece of fruit, but he'd noticed her. Noticed the way the men had spotted her, too. Some had outright gawked, wonder and lust written across their bodies as Marion lingered, oblivious at the edge of the crowd, and watched Lorcan instead. Beautiful. Ah! Shut up! Ah! Shut up! After a few weeks of eating, of safety, the terrified, gaunt young woman had somehow gone from pretty to beautiful. He'd ended his performance sooner than he'd intended, and by the time he looked up again, Marion was gone. Like a goddamn dog, he'd picked up her scent among the crowd and followed. Shut up! Oh my god. Okay. And followed her back to this tent, and the shadows and glowing lights within, with a headdress and dangling beads and dark red robes, the oracle incarnate, serene, exquisite, and utterly forbidden. And he'd been so focused on cursing himself for staring at that bright, sinful mouth while she admitted she was still in touch that he hadn't detected anything amiss until the screaming started. No, he'd been too busy contemplating what sounds might... No! He needs to shut the fuck up. I do not like being in his point of view. I do not. The attack, Lorcan supposed, was Hella's way of telling him to keep his member in his pants and mind out of the gutter. Oh my god. Get under a wagon and stay there, he snapped before hurtling out of the tent. He didn't wait to see if she obeyed. Marion was smart. She knew she'd stand a better chance at survival if she listened to him and found shelter. Lorcan loosed his gift through the panicking carnival sight. A wave of dark, terrible power sweeping out in a ripple, then rushing back to tell him what it sensed. His power was gleeful, breathless in a way he knew too well. Death. At one end of the field lay the outskirts of the little town. At the other, a copse of trees and endless night, and wings. Towering, forms plunged down from the skies. His magic picked up four ilkin as they landed, claws out and bearing those fresh, flesh-shredding teeth. The leathery wings, it seemed, marked them as some slight variation of the ones who had tracked them in Oakwald, a variation or a refining of an already ruthless hunter. People ran, screaming, toward the town, toward the cover of dark fields beyond. Those distant fires had not been set by farmers to burn their idle fields. They had been set to cloud the skies, to hide the scent of these beasts from him or any other gifted warriors. Marion. They were hunting Marion. The carnival was in chaos. The horses were shrieking and bucking. Lurkin plunged toward where the four ilkin had landed in the heart of the camp, right where he'd been performing minutes before, in time to see one landing atop a fleeing young man and flip him onto his back. The young man was still screaming for gods who would not answer as the ilkin leaned down, flicking free a long talon, and opened up his belly in a smooth swipe. He was still screaming when the ilkin lowered his mutilated face and feasted. Ugh. What in the burning hell are those? It was Ombriel, a long sword out, and gripped in a way that told him she knew how to wield it. Nick came thundering up behind her, two rough, near-rusted blades in his meaty hands. Soldiers from Morath was all Lorcan supplied. Nick was eyeing the blade and hatchet Lorcan had drawn, and he didn't think to pretend to not know how to use either, to be a simple man from the wilds, as he said with cold precision. They're naturally able to cut through most magic, and only beheading them will keep them down. They're nearly 8 feet tall, Ombriel said, face pale. Lorcan left them to their assessments in fear, stepping into the ring of light in the heart of the camp as the four ilkin finished playing with the young man. The human was still alive, silently mouthing pleas for help. Oh my god. I did not have to know that. Lorcan lashed out with his power, and could have sworn the young man had gratitude in his eyes as death kissed him in greeting. The ilkin looked up as one, hissing softly. Blood slid from their teeth. Lorcan tunneled into his power, preparing to distract and addle them, if their resistance to magic held true. Perhaps Marion would have time to run. The ilkin who had ripped open the belly of the young man said to him, laughter dancing on its gray tongue, "Are you the one in charge?" Lorcan simply said, "Yes." It told them enough. They did not know who he was, his role in Marion's escape. The four ilkin smiled. "We seek a girl. She murdered our kin and several others. They blamed her for the ilkin's death those weeks ago? Or was it an excuse to further their own ends? We tracked her to the Acanthus crossing. She may be hiding here, among your people." A sneer. Lorcan willed Nick and Ombriel to keep their mouths shut. If they so much as started to reveal them, the hatchet in his hands would move. "Check another carnival. We've had this crew for months. She's small," it went on, those two human eyes flickering, crippled on one leg. "We don't know anyone like that. They'd hunt her to the ends of the earth." "Then line up your crew so we might inspect them. Make them walk. Look them over. Look for a dark-haired young woman with a limp and whatever other markers her uncle had provided. You've scared them all away. It might be days before they return." "And again," Lorcan said, hatchet flicking a bit higher, "there's no one in my caravan who matches such a description." Behind him, Nick and Ombriel were silent, their terror a reek that shoved itself up its nose. Lorcan willed Marion to remain hidden. The ilkin smiled, the most hideous smile Lorcan had beheld in all his centuries. "We have gold." Indeed, the ilkin beside it had a hip pouch sagging with it. "Her name is Elite." Oh! Damn, they exposed her! I haven't seen any Crescent City 2 spoilers, other than it ends with, like, a big cliffhanger. That's the only thing I've seen. "Her name is Alid Lockin. Her uncle is Lord of Peranth. He will reward you handsomely to turn her over." The words hit Lorcan like stones. Marion, Alid, had lied, had managed to keep him from even sniffing the lie on her, had used enough truths of her own general fear to keep the scent of it hidden. "We know no one by such a name," Lorcan said again. "Pity," the sentinel crooned. For if you had her in your company, we would have taken her and left. But now, the Ilken smiled at its 3 companions, and their dark wings rustled. Now it seems we've flown a very long way for nothing, and we are very hungry. Damn. Damn. Is he gonna be angry at her? I hope he's not mad at her. No! I don't want them to fight. Chapter 41. Alid had squeezed herself into a hidden floor compartment in the largest of the wagons and prayed that no one discovered her, or began burning things. Her frantic breathing was the only sound. The air grew tight and hot. Her legs trembled and cramped from staying curled in a ball, but still she waited. Still she kept hidden. Lorcan had run out. He'd run into the fray. She'd fled the tent in time to see 4 Ilken, winged Ilken, descend upon the camp. She had not lingered long enough to see what happened after. Time passed. Minutes or perhaps hours, she couldn't tell. She had done this. She had brought these things here, to these people, to the caravan. The screaming grew louder, then faded. Sorry, my phone's dying. Lorcan might be dead. Everyone might be dead. Her ears strained, and she tried to quiet her breathing to listen for any sounds of life, of action beyond her small, hot hiding space. No doubt it was usually reserved for smuggling contraband, not at all intended for a human being. She couldn't stay hidden much longer. If the Ilken slaughtered them all, they'd search for any survivors, could likely sniff her out. She would have to make a run for it, have to break out, observe what she could, and sprint for the dark fields and pray no others waited out there. Her feet and calves had gone numb minutes before and now tingled incessantly. She might very well not even be able to walk. Her stupid, useless leg. She listened again, praying to Anith to turn the Ilken's attention elsewhere. Only silence greeted her. No more screaming. Now. She should go now. Bitch, if I was her, I would stay my ass in that little compartment for the rest of my life while she had the cover of darkness. Alid did not give her fear another heartbeat to whisper its poison into her blood. She had survived Morath, survived weeks alone. She'd make it. She had to make it. And she wouldn't at all mind being the Queen's goddamn dishwasher if it meant she could live. Alid uncoiled, shoulders aching as she quietly eased the trapdoor up, the little area rug sliding back. She scanned the interior of the wagon, the empty benches on either side, then studied the night beckoning beyond. Light spilled from the camp behind her, but ahead, a sea of blackness. The field was perhaps 30 feet away. Alid winced as the wood... Ooh, I'm scared! Alid winced as the wood groaned while she hefted the trapdoor high enough for her to slither, belly down over the floorboards. But her robe snagged, yanking her into a stop. Alid gritted her teeth, tugging blindly, but it had caught inside the crawl space. I need to save her. Tell me. Oh! Drawled the deep male voice behind her, from near the driver's seat. What would you have done if I were an Ilken soldier? Relief turned her bones to liquid, and Alid held in her sob. She twisted to find Lorcan covered in black blood, sitting on the bench behind the driver's seat, legs spread before him. Oh. That image. That image. Shut the fuck up. His axe and sword lay discarded beside him, coated in that black blood as well, and Lorcan idly chewed on a long stalk of weed as he gazed at the canvas wall of the wagon. The first thing I might have done in your place, Lorcan mused, still not looking at her, would have been to ditch the robe. You'd fall flat on your face if you ran, and the red would be as good as ringing the dinner bell. She tugged at the robe again, and the fabric ripped at last. Scowling, she patted where it had come free and found a loose bit of wood paneling. The second thing I might have done, Lorcan went on, not even bothering to wipe away the blood splattered on his face, is tell me the goddamn truth. Did you know those Ilken beasts love to talk with the right encouragement? And they told me some very, very interesting things. Those dark eyes at last led to her, utterly vicious. But you didn't tell me the truth, did you, Alid? Ah! Okay, maybe him being mad, I kind of dig. because it's kind of hot. I kind of like it. Her eyes were wide, her face leached of color beneath the cosmetics. She'd lost the headdress somewhere, and her dark sheet of hair slid free of some of its pins as she climbed from the hidden compartment. Lorcan watched every movement, assessing and weighing and debating what exactly to do with her. Liar. Cunning little liar. Alid Lorcan, rightful lady of Parenth, crawled out, slamming the trapdoor shut and glaring at him from where she knelt on the floor. He glared right back. "Why should I have trusted you," she said with impressive coldness, "when you were stalking me for days in the forest? Why should I have told you a thing about me when you could have sold me to the highest bidder?" His body ached. His head throbbed from the slaughter he'd barely managed to survive. The Elkin had gone down, but not willingly. And the one he'd kept alive, the one Nick and Ombriel had begged him to kill and be done with, had told him very little, actually. But Lorcan had decided his wife didn't need to know that. Decided it was time to see what she might reveal if he let some lies of his own fool her. Alid glanced at his weapons, at the reeking blood coating him like oil. "You killed them all?" He lowered the wheat stalk from his mouth. "You think I'd be sitting here if I hadn't?" Alid Lorcan wasn't some mere human trying to return to her homeland and serve her queen. She was a royal-blooded lady who wanted to get back to that fire-breathing bitch in the north to offer whatever aid she could. She and Aelin would be well-suited for each other, he decided. The sweet-faced liar and the insufferable haughty princess. Alid slumped onto the bench, massaging her feet and calves. "I'm risking my neck for you," he said too quietly, "and yet you decided not to tell me that your uncle isn't just a mere commander at Morath, but Erwin's right hand, and you are his prized possession. I told you enough of the truth. Who I am makes no difference, and I am no one's possession." His temper yanked at the leash he'd been careful to keep short before tracking her scent to this wagon. Outside, the others were hurriedly packing, readying to flee into the night before the villagers decided to blame them for the disaster. "It does make a difference who you are. With your queen on the move, your uncle knows she'd pay a steep price to get you back. You're not a mere breeding asset, you're a negotiation tool. You might very well be what brings that bitch to her knees." Rage flashed in her fine bone face. "You keep plenty of secrets too, Lorcan." She spat his name like a curse. "And I still haven't been able to decide if I find it insulting or amusing that you think I'm too stupid to notice. That you thought I was some fear-addled girl, too grateful for the presence of such a strong, brooding warrior to even question why you were there, or what you wanted, or what your stake in all this is. I gave you exactly what you wanted to see. A lost young woman in need of help, perhaps a bit skilled at lying and deceit, but ultimately not worth more than a few seconds' consideration, and you, in all your immortal arrogance, didn't think twice. Why should you, when humans are so useless? Why should you even bother, when you planned to abandon me the moment you got what you needed?" Damn. Lorcan blinked, bracing his feet on the floor. She didn't back down an inch. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to him like that. "I would be careful what you say to me." Alid gave him a hateful little smile. "Or what? You'll sell me to Morath? Use me as your ticket in? I hadn't thought to do that, but thank you for the idea." Her throat bobbed, the only sign of her fear. And she said clearly, and without a hint of hesitation, "If you try to bring me to Morath, I will end my own life before you can carry me over the keep's bridge." It was the threat, the promise, that checked his anger, his utter rage that she had indeed played into his expectations of her, his arrogance and prejudices. He said carefully, "What is it that you're carrying that makes them hunt you so relentlessly? Not your royal blood, not your magic and use for breeding, the object you carry with you. What is it?" Perhaps it was a night for truth. Perhaps death hovered close enough to make her a bit reckless, but Alid said, "It's a gift for Selena Sardothian, from a woman kept imprisoned in Morath, who had waited a long time to repay her for a past kindness. More than that, I don't know. A gift for an assassin, not the queen. Perhaps nothing of note, but let me see it." "No." They stared each other down again, and Lorcan knew that if he wanted, he could wait until she was asleep, take it for himself and vanish, see what might make her so protective of it. But he knew. Some small, stupid part of him knew that if he took from this woman, who had already had too much stolen from her, he didn't know if there was any coming back from that. He'd done such despicable, vicious things over the centuries and hadn't thought twice, had reveled in them, relished them, the cruelty. But this was a line. Or there was a line. Somehow there was a goddamn line here. She seemed to pick up on his decision, with whatever gift she had. Her shoulders slumped, and she stared blankly at the canvas wall as the sounds of their group grew closer. Their urging to hurry and pack, leave what could be spared. Elide said quietly, "Marion was my mother's name. She died defending Aelin Galathynius from her assassin. My mother bought Aelin time to run, to get away so she could one day return to save us all. My uncle, Vernon, watched and smiled as my father, the Lord of Paranth, was executed outside our castle. Then he took my father's title and lands and home, and for the next 10 years my uncle locked me in the highest tower of Paranth Castle, with only my nursemaid for company. When I broke my foot and ankle, he did not trust healers enough to let them treat it. He kept bars on the tower windows to keep me from killing myself." Oh my God! "And shackled my ankles to keep me from running. I left for the first time in a decade when he shoved me into a prison wagon and dragged me down to Morath. There he made me work as a servant for the humiliation and terror he delights in. I planned and dreamed of escaping every day, and when the time came, I took my chance. I did not know about the Ilkin, had only heard rumors of fell things being bred in the mountains beyond the keep. I have no lands, no money, no army to offer Aelin Galathynius, but I will find her and help her in whatever way I can, if only to keep just one girl, just one, from ever enduring what I did." I love her. He let the truth in her words sink into him, let them adjust his view of her, his plans. Lorcan said roughly, "I'm over 500 years old. I'm blood sworn to Queen Maeve of the Fae, and I am her second in command. I've done great and terrible things in her name, and I will do more before death comes to claim me. I was born a bastard on the streets of Doranel, ran wild with the other discarded children, until I realized my talents were different. Maeve noticed too. I can kill faster. I can sense when death is near. I think my magic is death, given to me by Hellas himself. I'm in these lands on behalf of my queen, though I came without her permission. She might very well hunt me down and kill me for it. If her sentinels arrive looking for me, it is in your best interest to pretend not to know who and what I am." There was more, but Elide had remaining secrets too. They'd offered each other enough for now. No fear tainted her scent, not even a trace of it. All Elide said was, "Do you have a family? No. Do you have friends? No." The cabal of warriors didn't count. Goddamn Whitethorn hadn't seemed to care when he abandoned them to serve Aelin Galathynius. Fenris made no secret he hated the bond. Vaughn was barely around. He couldn't stand Gavriel's unbreakable restraint, and Connell was too busy running Maeve like an animal most of the time. Oh. Elide angled her head, her hair sliding across her face. He almost lifted a hand to brush it back and read her dark eyes, but his hands were covered in that filthy blood, and he had the feeling Elide Lockin did not wish to be touched unless she asked to be. Oh my God. This is me putting an imaginary tab on that. Oh my God! Then she murmured, "You and I are the same in that regard, at least. No family, no friends." It hadn't seemed quite so pathetic until she said it, but until he suddenly saw himself through her eyes. But Elide shrugged, rising to her feet as Molly's voice barked from nearby. "You should clean up. You look like a warrior again." He wasn't sure if she meant it as a compliment. "Nick and Umbriel unfortunately realized you and I are perhaps not what we seem." Alarm flashed in her eyes. "Should we leave? No. They'll keep our secrets, if only because they'd seen Lorcan lay into those Ilkin and knew precisely what he could do to them if they so much as breathed wrong in their direction. We can stay a while yet, until we get clear of this." Elide nodded. Until we! Her limp deep as she headed back for the wagon for the back of the wagon. She sat on the edge before climbing off, her wrecked ankle too weak and painful to ever jump. Yet she moved with quiet dignity, hissing a little as her foot made contact with the ground. Lorcan watched her limp into the night without so much as a backward glance at him, and he wondered what the hell he was doing. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I love them so much. I love them so much. If anything happens to them, y'all, I can't. Please. Please, can it just be them? I can't, y'all. Oh my god. That's it for today. Oh, this crick out of my neck. We are getting into really good stuff. Yes, we left the other group with Manon falling into the water, and that was it. I know, I read ahead because I wanted to see if the next chapter was Manon, and so I just was looking for her name, and I found her name, so. Can't wait for you to finish the book. It's going to be an experience. Never mind. Oh, I was about to say something. Throw myself into this lake at the end of this book. I love Alita and Lorcan so much. I'm not even playing. They need to be happy. They need to have a happy ending. If I want a happy ending for anyone, it's them. I'm so sorry. Obviously not just them, but like, I really want them to be happy. My shoulder hurts. What? Why are y'all saying the things y'all are saying right now? Are you shitting my dick? Look at me. I'm tearing up. Are you telling me that the end of this book is the end of Alita and Lorcan? I'm gonna cry at the thought. Not one happy person at the end of this book. God damn. Y'all, be fucking for real. You'll be fine. I know I'll be fine eventually, but like, in the moment, I don't think. Y'all, I went to Pilates. Okay, so I'd heard a lot about Pilates because I have a lot of like issues with like achy knees. I have very weak ankles, so like going to the gym for me has always been just like a miserable experience. I hate going to the gym. It's very hard on my joints and I just don't enjoy it, and I never know what to do. So I had been recommended Pilates because I was like, oh, Pilates is very easy on your body, but you still get a very good workout. So I went, there's like a studio here that does just Pilates, and I went. They have a first class that's free. It's like an introduction class and it's free, and I went to that yesterday. I'm sore today, but I feel like yesterday when I was working out that I wasn't even working out. Like it was and I know that I worked out, like I had a good workout, but it wasn't hard on my body. And I'm like sore today, like my abs are sore. I really liked it, so I signed up. It's fucking expensive, but I really liked it. Oh yeah, I can't imagine having to wait for the next book to find out what happens. Like I can't imagine having to like sit there and wait for the next book to come out. It's called Club Pilates. It's called Club Pilates. They just opened up here in our town like a year ago. A cliffhanger for 2 years. Damn. Did I read any of Tower of Dawn? That hoe is sitting in the back of my car right now, untouched. The neglect I have shown this book, I feel horribly about. No, I have not read more of Tower of Dawn. It's the shutdown. I can't imagine how okay, so did Empire of Storms, obviously, no, they couldn't have. Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn did not come out at the same time, right? So, can you imagine, like, reading, I think maybe Empire of Storms came out first. So can you imagine reading Empire of Storms and then waiting for, like, Kingdom of Ash to come out, but instead you get Tower of Dawn? I would have been so pissed. I would have been so pissed. I'm so sorry. I would have been so pissed. I would have been pissed. I would have been so pissed. Damn, that must have sucked. Oh god, that was me. I'm so sorry. You're a trooper. You are a trooper. And another year for Kingdom of Ash. Oh, I would have written SJM a very angry letter. I see a lot of people that skip it. Yeah, I'm saying this even before the end of Empire of Shadows, but I'm just like, if this book ends in a manner that y'all are saying it ends, I'm picking up Kingdom of Ash immediately and wanting to read it. Like, I can't imagine having to wait for Kingdom of Ash and instead I get Tower of Dawn. No hate to my boy Kale. No hate, but like, he's just not at the forefront of my mind right now. It isn't, like, I'm sure it's important. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, I don't mean to shit talk the book, but like, I would just be mad wanting to read what happens next, and instead I have to read this whole entire other story. Yeah. No, yeah. I'm still gonna read it, but I just, you know, it kind of sucks. Only once. I picked up the Assassin's Blade because I want to reread it because I want to go back and annotate it. And so I picked it up. When was it? I picked it up the other day. I guess it doesn't really matter when. I picked it up the other day. I read Sam's name, like his dialogue. The first thing he says, I don't even remember what he said to Aelin. I read it, immediately cried, closed the book, put it back on my bookshelf. I can only think of Sam in the past tense now. And if I just like reading, like going back to when he was still alive, shit hurts. Yeah, I knew it was about Ben's body, and that's when Aelin was like, when you die, I'm not gonna fucking get your body. I'm gonna leave it there. And then, you know, that's what she was forced to do. So, okay, stop. I'm done. We're not talking about Sam anymore. Yeah, I honestly don't understand why people, like, recommend to other people not to read the Assassin's Blade first. It just makes sense chronologically, and, like, with the story, it flows a lot better than, like, having to go, like, finishing, what is it, the Heir of Fire, and then going back in time, and then coming back for Queen of Shadows. Like, it just... Yeah. Let's see. Let's get this book. Where is it? She's right here. Oh my god. Here she is. And she has such a pretty cover too. Like, I love this shade of blue, and like, ask me if I... Oh! He's got movement in his knee now. He's getting better. Yeah, that's it. All right, well, I obviously obviously have reading to do in this one, so well, that's it for today. I will see you guys. I want to go live during the week again. I hate school so much, and I know I'm probably gonna end up not passing my math class because, like, I've emailed my professor. I hate my professor. I've emailed my professor and asked him if we could, like, if I could like, I've asked him questions about reviews, and I've asked him questions about homework, and he just gives me the same answer that I need to look at, because we use this program that allows you to see examples, and I'm like, okay, I can see how it's done, but that's not sticking in my brain. Like, I need a way to learn it. That's just me copying the steps. And so I asked, can I use my notes on the review, or can I use my notes on the test, or can I use my review on the test? That man did not email me back. He straight up ghosted me. So I hate that class. But yeah, I probably can't go live during the week because I have a test for math this week, so I'm gonna be trying to study. But I will see you guys on Saturday. I love y'all. Thank you for joining. And I hope you'll have a good rest of your Sunday, or a good Sunday night if your Sunday is already over. Bye. See y'all on Saturday.